A rainy morning in Portland, the October rain fell steadily over Portland, painting the streets in shades of silver and gray. Jasmine Reed stood inside Honeycomb Bakery, her small shop tucked between a vintage bookstore and a coffee roaster on Hawthorne Boulevard. The windows were fogged with warmth, and the air smelled like butter, cinnamon, and fresh bread. She wiped her hands on her yellow apron, leaving streaks of powdered sugar across the fabric. On the counter sat a 3-layer chocolate cake decorated with delicate cream roses and gold leaf accents. It was a special order from Mrs. Patterson, one of her regulars, meant for her sister's birthday celebration. Jasmine carefully copied the delivery address onto a sticky note, but a drop of coffee from her morning cup blurred the street number slightly. 2847 Riverside Drive, she read aloud, squinting at the smudged ink. She packed the cake into a white box, securing it with twine, and loaded it into her delivery van. The rain drummed against the windshield as she drove through the winding streets of southeast Portland, past rows of craftsman homes with covered porches and maple trees, shedding their burnt orange leaves. The house on the hill when Jasmine pulled up to what she thought was the correct address. She found herself in front of a 2-story house that looked like it had been forgotten by time. The paint was faded gray, the garden overgrown with wild roses and blackberry vines. A single light glowed dimly through the front window. She checked the address again, then grabbed the cake box and hurried through the rain to the covered porch. She knocked 3 times, water dripping from her jacket onto the weathered wooden planks. The door opened slowly, and a man appeared. He was tall, probably in his late 30s, with dark hair touched by silver at the temples and eyes the color of stormy seas. He wore a simple gray sweater and jeans. There was something about his expression that made Jasmine think of old photographs. Beautiful but sad. "Hi. I have a birthday cake delivery for Mr. Patterson," Jasmine said. Lifting the box slightly, the man frowned, his brow creasing. "There's no one here by that name." Jasmine felt her stomach drop. She glanced down at the note in her hand, now completely soaked. "This is 2847 Riverside Drive, right?" "No," he said gently. "This is 2947? You're one street over?" "Oh no," Jasmine breathed, looking at the cake through the clear window of the box. The rain had been kind, but the roses were beginning to droop. "I'm so sorry to bother you. I must have read it wrong." An unexpected kindness, the man studied her for a moment, then glanced at the cake. Something in his expression softened, like ice beginning to melt in spring sunshine. "Is the cake ruined?" he asked quietly. "Not yet, but I'll need to take it back and fix the decorations before I can deliver it," Jasmine admitted. Already calculating how long it would take to repair the damage, he was silent for several seconds, then said, "I'll buy it. That way your trip isn't wasted." Jasmine blinked, surprised. "Oh, you don't have to do that." "Really? It's my mistake." "I insist," he said, and there was something in his voice that made her pause. Not pity, but something deeper, like he understood what it meant to make a mistake and want to fix it. "Wait here." He disappeared inside and returned with cash, pressing it into her palm. His fingers were warm despite the cold rain, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Jasmine saw loneliness there, the kind that had settled in and made itself at home. "Thank you," she said softly. "I hope you enjoy it. It's chocolate with vanilla buttercream and a hint of orange zest." "I'm sure it's perfect," he replied, taking the box carefully as Jasmine turned to leave. She called back over her shoulder, "If you do try it and you like it, we're at Honeycomb Bakery on Hawthorne. Stop by sometime." He nodded, watching her run through the rain to her van. As she drove away, Jasmine glanced in her rearview mirror and saw him still standing in the doorway, holding the cake like it was something precious. The taste of memory Daniel Foster closed the door and carried the cake to his kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the sound of rain against the windows and the distant hum of the refrigerator. He untied the twine and opened the box, and the scent that rose up made something in his chest tighten. It had been 3 years since the accident. 3 years since the kitchen fire that destroyed his restaurant and took the life of his sous chef, a young woman named Amy who had been like a daughter to him. 3 years since he walked away from everything, sold his successful restaurant empire, and disappeared into this quiet neighborhood. where no one knew his name or his past. He cut a small slice of the cake and took a bite. The chocolate was rich and deep, the buttercream light as clouds, and the orange zest brought a brightness that reminded him of summer mornings before everything fell apart. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in a very long time, he smiled. The cake tasted like hope. Like maybe, just maybe, there were still good things in the world worth tasting. Betty's wisdom back at Honeycomb Bakery. Jasmine was retelling the story to Betty Wilson, a 70-year-old woman who had taught her everything she knew about baking. Betty had owned the shop for 40 years before selling it to Jasmine 5 years ago, but she still stopped by every day to help and offer advice. "So you delivered it to the wrong house, and this mysterious man just bought it?" Betty asked, her eyes twinkling with amusement as she rolled out pie dough. "He seemed lonely," Jasmine said, mixing batter for the next day's cupcakes. "Like he needed something sweet in his life." "Well, you certainly provided that," Betty chuckled. "You've always had a gift for knowing what people need even when they don't know it themselves." Jasmine laughed, but as she worked, her mind kept drifting back to the man in the gray house. Something about him had touched her heart, a quiet sadness she recognized because she had felt it herself after her father died 2 years ago. Her father had been a baker too, and this shop was her way of keeping his memory alive. "Do you think he'll come by?" Jasmine asked. Betty smiled knowingly. "I think some mistakes are meant to happen, dear. Sometimes the wrong address leads you exactly where you're supposed to be." 3 days later, when Daniel Foster walked into Honeycomb Bakery 3 days later, the bell above the door chimed softly. The shop was warm and bright, with shelves lined with jars of honey and jam, and a display case full of pastries that looked like edible artwork. And there, behind the counter, was the woman who had delivered the cake, her curly brown hair pulled back with a yellow ribbon, flour dusting her cheeks. She looked up and smiled. And Daniel felt something shift in his chest. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. A tiny crack in the wall he had built around his heart. "Il came," Jasmine said, her smile widening. "Did you like the cake?" "It was the best thing I've tasted in years," Daniel replied honestly. "I'd like to order another one. The same kind, if possible." "Of course," Jasmine said, pulling out her order pad. "Can I get your name?" He hesitated for just a moment, then said, "Daniel. Daniel Foster," as Jasmine wrote it down. Neither of them noticed Betty watching from the kitchen doorway, a knowing smile on her face. She had seen enough love stories in her 70 years to recognize the beginning of one, even when the people involved didn't see it yet. The rain continued to fall outside, soft and steady, washing the streets clean and making everything smell fresh and new. And inside Honeycomb Bakery, something beautiful was just beginning to grow. A regular customer November brought cold winds and early darkness to Portland. But inside Honeycomb Bakery, everything glowed with warmth. Daniel Foster had become what Jasmine called a regular, though Betty insisted on calling him that handsome mystery man who clearly has a crush on our baker. He came in 3 times a week, always ordering the same chocolate cake with vanilla buttercream and orange zest. He would sit at the corner table by the window, sometimes reading, sometimes just watching the street. And sometimes his eyes would find Jasmine as she worked behind the counter. "Good morning." Daniel Jasmine greeted him one Tuesday, already reaching for the order slip. "The usual?" "Actually," Daniel said, and she noticed the hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "I was wondering if you could teach me something." Jasmine raised her eyebrows. "Teach you what?" "How to make that cake. I've been eating it so often, I think it's time I learned how to bake it myself." The request caught her off guard, but something about his sincerity made her laugh. "Are you sure? Baking can be tricky. I'm willing to learn," he said, and the way he looked at her made Jasmine's heart skip in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The baking lesson that Saturday afternoon. After the bakery closed, Jasmine set up a workspace in the kitchen. Daniel arrived wearing a simple black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and she noticed for the first time the faint scars on his forearms, the kind that came from working in hot kitchens. "Have you ever baked before?" she asked, handing him an apron. "A long time ago," Daniel said quietly. "I used to cook professionally, but I haven't been in a kitchen in years." Something in his tone told Jasmine not to press further. Instead, she guided him through the recipe, showing him how to measure flour properly, how to fold ingredients gently so the cake would stay light, how to test the buttercream for the right consistency. Daniel's hands moved with surprising skill, muscle memory taking over even after years away. As they worked side by side, flour dusting the air and chocolate melting in a double boiler, they talked. Small things at first. The weather, favorite books, childhood memories. But gradually, the conversation deepened. "Why did you open this bakery?" Daniel asked as he zested an orange, the bright citrus scent filling the kitchen. Jasmine was quiet for a moment, her hand stilling on the mixing bowl. "My father was a baker. He taught me everything. When he died 2 years ago, I felt lost. This shop was my way of keeping him alive, of holding on to something good." Daniel looked at her, understanding flickering in his gray eyes. "I think you would be proud of what you've built here." "What about you?" Jasmine asked softly. "You said you used to cook professionally. What made you stop?" The question hung in the air between them. Daniel's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "I lost someone. Someone important. And after that, cooking felt like a reminder of everything I'd destroyed." Jasmine reached out and touched his hand gently. "I'm sorry." They stood there in the quiet kitchen, the oven timer ticking softly, and something unspoken passed between them. Two people who had both lost something precious, both trying to find their way back to the light. Trouble brewing the following week brought news that made Jasmine's stomach drop. A large bakery chain called Sweet Empire was opening a location just 4 blocks away. Their advertisement promised gourmet pastries at everyday prices, boasted about their celebrity chef owner. Betty found Jasmine sitting at the counter after closing, staring at the flyer someone had left behind. "We've survived competition before," Betty said gently, placing a comforting hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "Not like this," Jasmine whispered. "Look at their prices, Betty. They're half of ours. How can we compete with that?" The answer was simple and terrible. They couldn't. Over the next 2 weeks, business at Honeycomb Bakery slowed to a trickle. Regular customers apologized as they explained they were trying the new place, just to see what it was like. The bills stacked up on Jasmine's desk, and the weight of worry pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. Daniel noticed immediately. He came in one afternoon to find Jasmine behind the counter, her eyes red from crying, though she tried to hide it. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "Nothing," she said automatically, then sighed. "Everything. I don't know how much longer I can keep this place open. The new bakery is taking all my customers, and I can barely afford to buy supplies anymore." Daniel's expression darkened. "Sweet Empire. You've heard of it?" "More than you know," he said quietly, then added, "Don't give up yet, Jasmine. Please, this place matters. What you do here matters." The anonymous gift. 3 days later, a delivery truck pulled up outside Honeycomb Bakery. The driver unloaded boxes of premium flour, Belgian chocolate, Madagascar vanilla, and organic butter. Everything was top quality, far better than what Jasmine normally used. "There must be a mistake," Jasmine told the driver. "I didn't order any of this." "No mistake," the driver said, handing her a clipboard. "It's paid for. Says here it's from an anonymous donor." Attached to the invoice was a note written in neat handwriting. "Every artist deserves the finest materials. Don't stop creating beauty." Jasmine stood in her kitchen surrounded by supplies, tears streaming down her face. Someone believed in her. Someone out there thought her work was worth saving. Betty found her like that and wrapped her in a tight hug. "See, the universe is taking care of you." But Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the universe. This felt personal, deliberate, like someone who understood exactly what she needed, growing closer with the new supplies. Jasmine created a special menu of premium desserts. She made dark chocolate tarts with sea salt caramel, lavender honey cakes, and her signature chocolate cake elevated with the finest ingredients. Word spread quickly about the new offerings, and slowly, customers began returning. Daniel came in every day now, and the time he spent at his corner table grew longer. Sometimes he would help carry supplies, fix broken equipment, or simply keep Jasmine company. as she baked late into the evening. One night, as they cleaned the kitchen together, Daniel said, "You know, watching you work reminds me why I fell in love with food in the first place. It's not about perfection or profit. It's about creating something that makes people feel cared for." Jasmine stopped wiping the counter and looked at him. In the soft light of the kitchen, with flour dusting his dark hair and a gentle smile on his face, he looked younger, lighter, as if the shadows that had haunted him were finally beginning to lift. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being here, for believing in this place when I almost stopped believing in it myself." Daniel stepped closer, and for a moment, the air between them seemed to shimmer with possibility. "Jasmine, I need to tell you something." But before he could finish, Betty burst through the back door, her face pale. "Jasmine, dear, you need to see this." Shh. She held up her phone, and on the screen was a news article with a headline that made Jasmine's blood run cold. Restaurant mogul Daniel Foster spotted in Portland. Is the disgraced chef planning a comeback? Below the headline was a photo of Daniel entering Honeycomb Bakery. Jasmine looked from the phone to Daniel, whose face had gone completely white. "Daniel Foster," she whispered, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. "You're the owner of Sweet Empire, the chain that's trying to put me out of business." "No," Daniel said quickly, desperately. "I mean, yes, I founded the company, but I sold it years ago. I have nothing to do with it anymore." Jasmine pleased, but she stepped back, her hand pressed against her chest as if trying to hold her heart together. "You've been coming here all this time, watching me struggle, and you never said anything. Was this all some kind of game to you? Some wealthy man's entertainment?" "That's not what this is," Daniel pleaded, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away. "I think you should leave," Jasmine said, her voice breaking. "And please don't come back." The look on Daniel's face was devastating, but Jasmine turned away before she could change her mind. She heard the bell chime as he left, and then she was alone with Betty, surrounded by the bakery she had poured her heart into. Feeling more lost than ever, Betty wrapped her arms around her as Jasmine finally let herself cry. Great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Outside, the November rain began to fall again, cold and unforgiving, washing away the footprints on the sidewalk as if Daniel Foster had never been there at all. But the memory of his touch, his kindness, and the way he had made her believe in hope again lingered like the scent of chocolate and orange, sweet and bitter all at once. The weight of truth, the morning after the revelation, Honeycomb Bakery felt hollow despite the warm ovens and sweet smells. Jasmine moved through her routine mechanically, mixing batter and decorating cakes, but her heart wasn't in it. Every time the bell chimed, she looked up hoping and dreading that it might be Daniel. It never was. Betty watched her with worried eyes, but said nothing for 3 days. Finally, on Thursday afternoon, as Jasmine burned her third batch of cookies, the older woman had had enough. "Sit down," Betty commanded, pointing to a stool. "We need to talk." "I'm fine," Jasmine protested weakly. "It burning cookies, dear. You're many things, but fine isn't one of them." Betty poured 2 cups of tea and sat across from her. "Tell me the truth. Are you angry at Daniel for who he was, or are you angry because you were falling in love with him?" The question hit Jasmine like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. "Both," she whispered finally. "He lied to me, Betty. He knew I was struggling because of a company he created, and he never said a word." "Did he actually lie, or did he just not tell you everything?" Betty asked gently. "There's a difference, you know." Jasmine was quiet, thinking back through their conversations. Daniel had never claimed to be anyone other than who he was. He had been honest about his pain, his past in professional cooking, his reasons for leaving that life behind. What he hadn't done was connect all the dots for her. He was ashamed, Betty continued. Anyone could see that. The man was carrying enough guilt to sink a ship. Maybe he didn't tell you because he was afraid of exactly what happened, that you'd stop seeing him as Daniel and start seeing him as the villain in your story. The investigation that evening, after closing, Jasmine did something she had been avoiding. She searched Daniel Foster's name online. What she found made her heart ache. 5 years ago, Daniel had been Portland's golden boy. His restaurant, Ember, had been world famous, earning awards and praise from critics everywhere. He had been planning to expand, to create a chain of high-end casual bakeries called Sweet Empire that would make gourmet food accessible to everyone. Then came the fire. A kitchen accident at Ember's main location. One person killed, a 26-year-old woman named Amy Chen who had worked with Daniel for 7 years. The investigation revealed faulty equipment that Daniel, as owner, was responsible for maintaining. The lawsuits came next. Amy's family, insurance companies, investors. Daniel had paid every claim without fighting, selling everything he owned, including Sweet Empire, to cover the costs. Then, he had disappeared from public life entirely. Jasmine read article after article, seeing the progression from celebrated chef to broken man. In the later photos, she could see the shadows that still lingered in his eyes when she had met him. The weight of guilt he carried in the slope of his shoulders. He hadn't been hiding from success. He had been hiding from shame. The anonymous benefactor. The next morning, Jasmine received another delivery. This time it was accompanied by a letter. The handwriting was familiar, the same neat script from the note that had come with the supplies. "Dear Jasmine," it read, "I know you've asked me to stay away, and I'm respecting that wish. But I need you to understand something. The supplies I sent were not charity or pity. They were an investment in something I believe in, you. When I walked into your bakery that first day, I was barely living. I was existing in that house, day after day, punishing myself for a mistake I can never undo. But your cake, that simple chocolate cake delivered to the wrong address, reminded me that there was still sweetness in the world. You saved me, Jasmine. You didn't know it, but every smile, every conversation, every moment in your bakery brought me back to life bit by bit. I should have told you who I was. I know that now. But I was afraid that if you knew, you'd see me the way I saw myself, as someone who destroyed everything he touched. Sweet Empire was supposed to be about making good food accessible to everyone. Instead, it became just another corporation focused on profit margins. When I sold it, the new owners took it in a direction I never intended. I'm sorrier than you can know that it's causing you pain. I've contacted Sweet Empire's current CEO. I still have some influence, even if I don't have control. The location opening near you will be relocating to a different neighborhood. It won't fix everything, but maybe it will give you breathing room. You don't owe me forgiveness. But please don't give up on Honeycomb Bakery. The world needs places like yours, run by people who bake with their hearts. Keep creating beauty, Jasmine. Keep making people believe in sweetness. Always, Daniel." Jasmine read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. Then she grabbed her coat and ran. The house on the hill. The rain had returned, because of course it had. Jasmine drove through the downpour to the gray house on the wrong street, the place where this had all begun. Daniel's car was in the driveway, and lights glowed from inside. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding. When Daniel opened it, the surprise on his face was followed immediately by hope, fragile and desperate. "Jasmine, you're an idiot," she said, and then she was crying and laughing at the same time. "You're a complete idiot, Daniel Foster. You should have told me who you were." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "But I'm an idiot too," Jasmine continued, "because I pushed you away without listening. Without giving you a chance to explain. You made mistakes, Daniel, but you've been trying to make up for them. I can see that now." Daniel stepped out into the rain, not seeming to notice he was getting soaked. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," Jasmine agreed, stepping closer. "But you're getting it anyway, because the man who comes to my bakery every day, who fixed my oven and taught me it's okay to be imperfect, who makes me laugh and believe in good things again, that man deserves another chance." Jasmine. Daniel breathed her name like a prayer. "I'm still broken. I'm still carrying all this guilt." "Then we'll carry it together," she said firmly. "You helped me when I was falling apart. Let me help you now. Let's help each other." And then Daniel was pulling her close, his arms wrapping around her like he was afraid she might disappear. They stood in the rain, holding each other, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt like he might actually be forgiven, if not by the world. Then, at least by himself. The Festival of Lights 2 weeks later. Portland's annual Winter Festival transformed the city into a wonderland of lights and music. Honeycomb Bakery had a booth in the main square, featuring Jasmine's creations alongside a new item, a collaborative dessert she and Daniel had created together. They called it Wrong Address Cake, chocolate and orange confection with a twist of fate. Half the proceeds went to a foundation Daniel had established in Amy Chen's name, supporting young culinary students. Daniel stood beside Jasmine at the booth, no longer hiding, no longer running. When reporters approached asking about his return to the culinary world, he answered honestly. "Not returning as the person I was," he told them. "I'm building something new, something smaller and more meaningful. And I'm doing it with someone who taught me that the best recipes aren't about perfection. They're about heart." As the festival's grand finale began, fireworks exploding over the Willamette River in cascades of gold and silver, Daniel took Jasmine's hand. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a vintage recipe card, yellowed with age. "This was my grandmother's recipe for chocolate cake. It's where I learned that food could mean love. I want you to have it." Jasmine looked at the card, at the faded handwriting, and the notes scrawled in the margins, and understood what he was really giving her. His history, his heart, his trust. "There's something written on the back," Daniel said softly. She turned it over and read, "Some mistakes lead us exactly where we need to be. Thank you for giving me the wrong address and the right reason to start living again. I love you," Jasmine read. Jasmine looked up at him, this man who had been broken and was learning to heal, and felt her own heart expanding with a warmth that had nothing to do with ovens or kitchens. "I love you too," she whispered. "You beautiful, complicated cake-buying man." Daniel laughed, really laughed, the sound bright and free. Then he kissed her as fireworks painted the sky above them and the crowd cheered. Though whether for the display or for them, neither knew nor cared. 6 months later, spring came to Portland with cherry blossoms and soft rain. Honeycomb Bakery was thriving, featured in magazines as one of the city's hidden gems. But more importantly, it remained what it had always been, a place where people came not just for cake, but for connection, for comfort. For the feeling that someone cared, Daniel had moved out of the gray house and into a small apartment above the bakery. He and Jasmine were developing a new menu, combining his technical expertise with her heartfelt creativity. They argued over recipes, laughed over burnt experiments, and fell more in love with every passing day. Betty watched them work together one morning and smiled, remembering that rainy day months ago when Jasmine had delivered a cake to the wrong house. She said to them both, "I've seen a lot of love stories in my 70 years, but I think this one might be my favorite."